Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous.
On September 4th, an alarming article appeared in Alex Jones' InfoWars. The headline said that a Swedish behavioral scientist suggests eating humans to save the planet. It went on to explain that in a talk at a Stockholm conference on the future of food, scientist Magnus Soderlund proposed eating human flesh to preserve nature. Then, said the article, Soderlund gave his suggestion again on Swedish TV, actually Swedish Channel 4. This raised a question. Was any of this true? Or was InfoWars simply making it all up to titillate its audience the way that Alex Jones, made up the whole idea that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, a gory, monstrous mass murder that took 26 lives, was a hoax, a complete fake, concocted to take your guns away? So I looked for further evidence, and lo and behold, InfoWars, for once, was right. The event was 6 months old by the time InfoWars reported on it, which means that InfoWars really had to dig hard to find evidence that environmentalists are as rabid as dogs. But it existed. The facts were these. At the Gastro Summit Food Fair in Stockholm on March 9, 2019, a professor from the Stockholm School of Economics named Magnus Soderlund had indeed proposed that the next source of gourmet protein should be human meat. Or to put it in the summit's words, the controversial issue of eating human flesh was posed by Professor Magnus Soderlund at the Gastro Summit Food Fair in Stockholm, where the challenges of the future of food supply are discussed. And Soderlund is a legitimate academic. He's not exactly a scientist. He is professor of marketing and head of the Center for Consumer Marketing at the Stockholm School of Economics. He has well over a dozen academic publications to his credit, most of them on his key area of expertise, customer satisfaction, whether customers are happier when you smile at them. Now, just imagine the satisfaction customers like you and me would get out of eating the meat of people of modest distinction and reading their obituaries on the menu. You know what I had for dinner yesterday? A human rights activist. Where in the world do such repulsive ideas come from? They come from the extremes of environmentalist thinking. Remember, it's been claimed that cattle are one of the greatest sources of greenhouse gases on the planet. They fart out methane, a gas with 84 times the greenhouse potency of carbon dioxide. So what's the obvious solution? Stop eating cows and chickens. Start eating your fellow human beings. Now look, any good thing in excess is a poison. Environmentalism does many good things. As recently as the 1960s, the air of London, New York, or LA could kill you. It was filled with a mix of brown chemicals, coal dust, and other particulates called smog. In one London smog attack in 1952, 4,000 Londoners died. Yes, in just one smog attack. Environmentalists got rid of smog. They made sure the air you breathe is not going to give you cancer. Environmentalists save forests and wetlands. They save entire species. In 1969, the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, Ohio, was so polluted by a local steel plant, it caught fire. Environmentalists got that river cleaned up. In 1972, Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, was so saturated with chemicals that most of its fish died off. Environmentalists got that huge lake cleaned up. Now today, Lake Erie has fish again, but it's experiencing massive toxic blooms. Once again, it's the environmentalists who are coming to the rescue. Environmentalists are forcing oil companies to minimize toxic spills. And environmentalists push for wind and solar power. So on the whole, environmentalism is good. In fact, it's very good. And it's necessary. But to repeat, any good thing in excess is a poison. This is true when you take environmentalism to the extreme. In fact, when you push environmentalism to its strange and gnarly ends, you get eco-nihilism. Eco-nihilism, is there really such a thing? There sure is. Just take a look at deep ecology. Norway's Arne Næss founded the deep ecology movement in 1973, nearly 50 years ago. Then he created the Foundation for Deep Ecology in 1990. The Foundation for Deep Ecology is still going strong today. Just take a look at its website. Now, what did Arne Næss want? He wanted to reduce the total human population to 100 million people. There were a total of 4 billion humans back in Næss's day, which means Næss wanted almost 4 billion humans to die. Another Scandinavian, Pentti Linkola from Finland, gave an idea of exactly how he felt we should get rid of the extras. It's simple. Use nuclear bombs. Said Linkola, if there were a button I could press, I would sacrifice myself without hesitating, if it meant millions of people would die. Not only was Linkola pro-mass murder, he was pro-cruelty. Linkola said this: what to do when a ship carrying 100 passengers suddenly capsizes and there is only one lifeboat? When the lifeboat is full, those who hate life will try to load it with more people and sink the lot. Those who love and respect life will take the ship's axe and sever the extra hands that cling to the sides. Yes, mass murderers, Linkola said, were the folks who really loved life. Those who try to save others were the criminals. This is not just insane, it is evil. Environmental extremists regard humans as a scourge that is overpopulating the planet and devouring its resources. They tell us we are raping the earth. They tell us we are a cancer on the planet. You could see this approach coming to life in 1968 with the publication of the book The Population Bomb. The author of The Population Bomb, Paul Ehrlich, was a butterfly researcher. He told us that within 12 years, people would be so numerous on this planet that they would starve by the hundreds of millions. His predictions pointed to the 1980s as the time of the great die-off. But did that catastrophe ever occur? Did hundreds of millions die in the 1980s? No, the precise opposite happened. The world became capable of feeding more people more richly, and the great die-offs that were normal in China and India back in the 1940s and 1950s, they stopped. But none of the population bomb's believers ever took a look at the facts and changed their convictions. In fact, population explosion fearmongers are alive and kicking to this very day. Then came the Club of Rome in 1972 and put out a report called Limits to Growth. The Club of Romers claimed they had solid evidence on their side. Their research had been done at MIT using something new called computer simulations. Once again, the eco-nihilists proved wrong. The things the limits of growth told us we'd run out of are more abundant than ever. Robert Zubrin, in his book Merchants of Despair, traces the anti-humanist movement back to the eugenics movement of the late 1800s, which was kicked off by Charles Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton. Eugenicists felt we should get rid of those who are not fit. They wanted to kill off the mentally retarded and those born with physical defects. The Nazis took that idea and ran with it. They wanted to exterminate the Jews and slaughter the Slavs. They dehumanized the Jews as vermin and the Slavs as livestock, cattle, shtucken, creatures born to be exploited, then killed. But the fact is that we are not running out of resources, we are running out of imagination. For every ounce of biomatter on this planet, there are 100 million ounces of dead molecules just waiting to be kidnapped, seduced, and recruited into the ambitious minuet of life. Nature knows this. Yes, nature. How can we tell? Because our very first life forms, bacteria, are 12 miles beneath your feet and mine right now, eating granite, kidnapping, seducing, and recruiting dead molecules into the grand dance of life. No, we do not need to eat each other to save nature. To save nature, we need to take the genius of bacteria even further. We need to realize that kidnapping, seducing, and recruiting dead substances and bringing those inanimate things into the magic cotillion of life is the most important job that nature will ever give us. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. And now for the sneaky, sleazy, slimy, seditious, sibilant, scintillating little off button. I think I found it.